Kathleen here from DC Water. So good morning, Kathleen. And
Good
Steve
morning.
Tolzman. I was just sharing with everyone that you guys are ready to jump in this morning. And like I said, Stephen from Gwinnett County also has some things if we get to it, but we've got the time allotted to have discussion and for you guys to provide the update from DC Water. And then on December 7th, Steve Tolzman's lined up for King County to do some sharing on what they're working on. But yeah, Cello, thanks for the update. The Cello and the whole project has a lot of parallel efforts going on here. Of course, our goal today, we're focused on the CIP planning, the business case evaluation, and CIP delivery process, and each working on our own improvement initiatives to try and figure out how we can make those things work better, utilizing the tools that we've developed through this UAIM process with business process modeling and evaluating that, collaborating with teams, and then identifying improvement initiatives to implement. So we'll continue down that path with this group, but I know a lot of you are also involved in those other parallel efforts that Cello mentioned on the people side. In particular, I've been involved with the change management piece because that's interrelated to what we're talking about here. I mean, whatever we're trying to implement for improvements, we're going to be going through the change management processes. So if you're not already engaged in one of those groups, reach out to Cello or Scott or even myself, and we can get you plugged in for one of those groups. And they're forging ahead with workshops, as Cello mentioned, on December 14th. So, all right, I think we're 5 minutes in. That's right on time, right on target for welcoming and introductions. Are there any other comments or anything from the group in terms of questions or comments before we just dive in and let Getachew and Kathleen take the floor?
Hey, Dan.
People coming in. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Dan, real quick. This is Mike. I want to just say something about the modeling. Again, if anybody of this group or others that are in other groups, get the word out that we are working pretty diligently in the background to collect these business process models, get them in good shape, start building the repository, which will end up as a set of folders in the Teams site. So I've been in touch with a few people. I'll be contacting more. But if you want to proactively reach out to me and let me know that you're working on something, please do so, because I'll start tracking it and actively, asking people for updates. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, yeah, and two, when we say business process modeling, if right now you've just got a flow chart of how your process works and you want to continue to build upon that and leverage some of the tools that we've been talking about, yeah, definitely get with Dr. Mike and share what you've got. And he's also been a great resource to help us with, at least here at KC Water, with learning business process modeling, those tools. So thank you for that.
Yeah, happy to help. Thank you, Dan.
All right. Well, with that, unless anybody else has got anything, we'll give it over to Getachew and Kathleen, and I think they've got a guest from KC or DC Water with them as well, to share an update on where they are with their initiative. They shared their project plan with us early on and progress, so we're going to get an update and learn kind of where they're at, and hopefully that'll also spark some questions and thoughts with some of the similar initiatives that you all are working on. So with that, Getachew, you want to take it over?
Thank you, Dan. Kathleen will be presenting today, but I just want to make a shout out to Dr. Mike. He has been a very good resource for us, very good person to work with. So we've been using his, expertise in this business process. I think I just encourage all of you to use that. He's a very, very nice person. Even sometimes he makes himself available at odd hours, wherever he may be in the world. So I'm, looking at Cello, Dr. Mike, and Scott. I'm just, they are amazing people. So just shout out to these great guys. And Kathleen, you can take over now. Thank you.
Okay. So this is DC Waters up where we are. Sorry, let me get a little organized here with the too many screens. Okay, so what we're going to do today is go through our journey so far from August to now, how we put the team together and the project approach. As Dan mentioned, Getachew had gone through and shown our plan. So we're going to basically track kind of all the steps that we took quickly, the schedule, the gap analysis, and then in the as-is model, we'll go through a little bit of detail just on how we did an update for that. Again, we worked with Mike Barnett, and as we went through the as-is, we kind of came up with a lot of things that we wanted to improve. So the conversation is very integrated in terms of where we are, where we want to be. We identified improvements and then kind of spend a few minutes talking about where we go from here. So the first thing really is putting the team together, and on this left-hand side on the top is the sponsors. These were directors, and we basically looked at the engineering directors as well as the operations directors, the end users of the capital facilities. And Getachew did a very compelling pitch to them about the value of participation in UM, what is DC Water's commitment, what we've gotten out of it, what we benefits we expect to get out of this year, and then ask them to assign people to participate on the team. So we have this team here, and I think I see Ram, I think, is on the call as a representative of, is there anybody else, Getachew, from DC Water who's on the call today?
I believe Duncan is here, so let me check the names.
Yeah, I'm on the call, but I won't be there too long. But I'm here just as a spectator. Yes.
Okay. We just wanted to tell the group there's real people behind this.
Yeah.
You can attest to.
I'm online.
Yeah. So really great group of people. All of these people have had experience using the BCE. Either as an end user or as a participant in the scoring and so forth. So one new thing we added that have not been involved in our BCEs before is people and talent. Some people say human capital or whatever, your human resources. Makeda has been working on the other side of the UAIM project as well. So I guess it's time for me to move on to this slide. So project initiation, that took us a little while, get the scoping down. The as-is models, we finished that up. The process, we're starting to work on those models now. And updating the BCE guidance tool, we're actually a little ahead of schedule. We've got some draft language on those. And what we want to do is figure out how we're going to test this. So the implementation of the improvement plan will be, starting in the new year. So the next month is really to get there. I don't expect you to read this. This is just kind of show you how we got the good thinking and the good experience from the team. Across the top are the things that we wanted to improve in the process or update. The team members are on the side. These are the different comments that people made, and the colors kind of show you where people hit the same theme a couple times. Again, Getachew did a very compelling consensus building, and we have nothing out of scope. We wanted to make sure that the scope was narrow enough that we could get it all done. So we kind of went through that process of what's in scope, what's out of scope, and we ended up with everything in scope. So next thing is the as-is model. This one, if anybody wants to ask questions, please don't hesitate. This is the as-is model that we had already mapped out, and we just went to this group and said, is this true or false? What we thought, how we modeled it, is this really how it happens? So this one, this is supposed to be, yeah, this is true. This is exactly where we do it, is it feeds into the project validation. This BCE, we have a bypass, that's true. These are the steps when we do the BCE sub-process. That's true. So again, this looks so easy, right? The needs statement, this is where it kind of got, well, we don't really do an opportunity report. We just do a opportunity statement or need statement, and it's not, the opportunity and the needs are not developed before you establish a team. The team actually has a lot to say about what is the opportunity. I want to spend a minute talking about opportunity statement, because this is really, and I know there's a lot of conversation in this group about what triggers a BCE, when do you need to do it? And a lot of it is a misunderstanding of what the need is. So for example, we had a project where the need statement was, we need a generator. But really, that wasn't the need. The need was they needed backup power. And they could never get, they kept getting this generator, which didn't fit as the answer. But really, they needed another power feed, or, you know, to do some tiebreaker things upstream or what have you. So getting the need right is really a big part of the BCE. So this one, develop the alternative sub-process, that was again kind of flagged as a 2B. Maybe you'll need to do something more with this, but it reflects what the as-is process is. Now the financial, this is the financial analysis and the non-monetary criteria. So you develop the analysis and the inputs, you perform the analysis. At the same time, you're doing the non-monetary, performing the analysis. Then you score it. Does it make sense? Maybe you'll go back to refine the alternatives. What the feedback we got was, this is kind of true, except often when you're doing the beginning inputs, you realize that your alternatives need to be fleshed out a little more. So you go back into refining alternatives at this stage, not after you do the scoring. And then this one is pretty funny. We have BCE team selects preferred alternative. We got a lot of pushback of like, that just sounds too easy, because there's a lot of conversation on the preferred alternative. It's not usually, okay, this is number one and go. So we just changed the language to say builds consensus. And then for the 2B, we identified adding escalation as a need. If the team doesn't agree, how do you resolve that? So this, and I want to give a little credit to CH Hill, they, which was their name at the time, they were asset management program manager for DC Water. This guidance was written, I think, in 2014. Since then, our organization has changed quite a bit. So we don't have this trigger for money. We don't have the asset management steering team. A lot of this has changed. So this whole process, I think, is, we're just going to have to do a new process for the governance. And I'm just going to take a breath for a second, because that's the end of the modeling. Does anybody have questions or want to see more detail on the modeling? Dan?
Hey, Kathleen. Yeah, I'm just, it's really helpful to see how you guys have used your as-is model to facilitate these conversations with the stakeholders. For us here at KC Water, we are really just kind of capturing and documenting our as-is process and starting to implement things as we go. But I guess I was curious, you know, what, from your perspective, what have been some of the ahas or lessons learned or benefits that you saw by having this documented and being able to you know, have this conversation with your stakeholders?
So I'll let maybe Duncan, if he's only got a couple more minutes, he can maybe add. I think it's a lot easier to have people react than to start from a blank page. Duncan, do you have a?
Jason had a question. Or you had your hand up.
Or I don't know if Dan, was there more to be said about Dan's question? I can wait.
Yeah, Kathleen, I don't know if you want, did Duncan have a comment? I guess he's one of your stakeholders that maybe went through the process.
Yeah, I think we assumed that the process we were given, it was articulated, the process was articulated on paper, but actually what we discovered, I don't think we had ever gone through it and see whether we are going each and every step. So that was something that actually we discovered that maybe even from the beginning, some of those steps should not have been there. They were there maybe in theory, but that's not how we were doing it even a couple of years back. So I think it's always good to go once you set up a process. It's always good to test drive the process and see whether it works before you distribute it for others to use. So that's something that we learned from going through it.
Very good. Yeah, sounds like it's like we've talked about before, it's like a continuous improvement process. You get something documented, and it sounds like you have to kind of put it back out there to see if this is really how it works, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Cool. All
So
right, go ahead,
Jason, I think you can.
Yeah, I guess my question is quite similar. It's sort of like around the change management of it, or maybe, I mean, do you believe that this process was like quite similar to the ones that you were already following? It's just now that you had the documentation, or did you believe that like through this research you were actually introducing some net new process? Like how much, like to what degree this actually changed the organization, or was it just sort of like formalizing what was always happening?
So I think that's yet to come. I think we hope to streamline the process, and we've identified, and I'll get to that in another slide, of kind of what are the opportunities for improvement. And this is where I think the value of having people who've actually used the process kind of share what their hiccups are and what the struggles are, so we can improve it. So I see Stephen Seacrest has his hand up.
Right. I think you hit on something really important here on this slide in particular, where there's that moment where you have to present your recommendation to the management team, and you don't want it to be too defined to the point where they feel like they don't have any input. So how do you do that? How in your organization do you handle presenting your recommendation, and what kind of input do you solicit from the management team at that point?
That's a great question, because again, that's one of the things that we're debating in our BCE improvement team, whether we have a review and approval process, or whether that stays at a lower level where we say the planning department can really decide on the alternatives, and you only need to take it to a higher level if there's a particular issue. The other thing I think, and we're going to present to our sponsors, before we get into the implementation phase, to kind of see where they are on that. How much input do they want to have, and how does that work? But yeah, the recommendation's never final. There's always a chance for somebody to go back. And the whole idea with the BCE is that your processes are well documented and your criteria is well established. So it's not so arbitrary if somebody needs to change it at the end. They know exactly why they're changing it.
Yeah.
So, Kathleen, do you want me to add?
Sure.
On that, okay. So the business case evaluation team is composed of the various departments, and so the process is very engaging, and whatever we arrive at, if a consensus has been reached, that is very the preferred approach. And sometimes if it doesn't, then we are working on the escalation. But the reason why I want to speak now is because there are meetings and presentations that the team does through the process, and we invite department directors and functional managers to those meetings to get their input in the process. Even though the team is representative and we do our best to do the best job we can, but still we get those inputs through those workshops and meetings, and that will be a good time for the directors and the managers to chime in, and maybe if there is any concern, we'll know that we are not, whether we are going in the right direction or not. So it's not mentioned in our processes, but there are those type of meetings which helps us to make whatever we come up with is something that we can take it to to implementation. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Jeff, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Kathleen, I've got a question about what level of people you bring into the room when you're reviewing these the proposed alternatives. I say that because in our case we Jason and the crew bring together this great compiled list of all the different projects that are being proposed. But if we have questions about particular alternatives that have been considered or whether they've been considered, often it's not that person isn't in the room. It's their boss or their boss's boss, and they aren't always sitting there with full information about it. So then we have to kick it back to that team. We end up doing 2 or 3 rounds. And I'm wondering about what you guys do in terms of the right level of efficiency, in terms of, do you bring in 800 people to the room, or do you kick things 3 times to get the right information? How do you manage that?
So to date, and again, Getachew can speak to this more precisely, but we actually have the decision made at I want to say that the manager level. So everybody in the room really understands all the details, and then the director kind of gives it a final signature kind of thing. Is that right, Getachew? We don't really have a high, like, executive level review with the people in the room not knowing the details of the BCE.
No, I think it all depends on the type of project. Most of our projects, the maximum, the highest level is a director. Otherwise, as Kathleen said, the functional managers are the one that basically gets it going, and that's also our responsibility from organizational roles and responsibilities. The functional managers are basically, they do most of the job, and then in their meetings with the director, and sometimes if needed, they will invite the director to come and listen, and the directors come and listen. I haven't come across a project that goes beyond a director level.
Okay, so the individual group does the assessment of, so someone within that individual group says, yeah, we've looked at our options, we're good, here's the one we recommend. There's not a broader interdepartmental team that's doing that review?
So the team does the scoring itself, and then the recommendation, again, it's like a consensus. So the team, which includes the user groups as well as the engineering groups. But all of these are great things that we are really going to come back in 6 months with the what did we change and how do we think it worked. But right now, the team itself represents the different groups, say user and engineering, and makes the decisions and comes up with a consensus.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Jason, I think that's the kind of stuff we could be chatting about, more ways to just reform process. We've got some great forums now, but how do we fine tune who's involved at what stages and so on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would love, and we don't have to do it today, Dan. Maybe we can put it on a agenda for another time. But I would love to have a chat with all the utility partners about the right decision-making level and what kind of things need to get escalated to what point, because I think it's highly variable from utility to utility, and it's something we're kind of nervous about adding. We actually had a conversation last week in our team meeting. Somebody was saying, which she read from one of the artifacts of, you need a consistent and checked, and somebody at a higher level has to sign off on every BCE so that they're all done the same. And we don't really have that. We have everything done at a much more of a execution level. So love to hear from people about how that works, or how they want it to work. Scott, did you have your hand raised?
We can dig in on that more later. Yeah, thanks.
I had a quick one, Kathleen. I really like what you did on the true false screen that you did, and I was just wondering if that's something that you build into the process in terms of a process step, or whether it's already assumed. It's just a further detail. How are you handling that in your business process flow?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean in terms of the
Do you have a step?
improvement initiative?
Well, do you have a step? I mean, what you've done is you've basically looked at as is, and you've said, does this properly reflect, our current status as a precursor to, basically going to be? Is that a process step that's appropriate in there, or is it kind of covered anyway?
I thought it worked out pretty well. And again, we had the advantage of having built this as is last year. If you're starting with a blank piece of paper, I think the true false is easy for the attention span. Have something on the board that people can react to. So I don't know what others think. I think it's a good step.
Yeah, this is Dan. I really gravitated to that, or I like that too, because Zach Monroe and I here at KC Water, we're just putting together our initial business process model diagrams for our CIP delivery. And we had a meeting last week with a couple of our newer project managers, and really just, does this make sense? Is this aligned with what you have experienced as you've gone through project delivery? Because we just didn't even have a process before. And so yeah, this is helpful to kind of see how you're using it, how you're engaging your stakeholders, and how what tools are you using to kind of get their feedback.
Right.
So yeah, and I guess I want to also mention to folks out there, if you don't already have your business process model documented, that's kind of like first step. Just get something on paper, get something on a flow chart, and start, getting it out there and just talking to users. Because like I said, for us, that's been beneficial. And you start to realize that, as is to be, they start to kind of flow together a little bit, because as you're talking about your as is process, you're starting to come up with ideas for how you can do it differently, how you can do it better. And so don't get too caught up in putting the as is process into a neat little box and the to be process into a neat little box, because they kind of intermingle with each other. So I don't know, Kathleen, has that kind of been your experience?
Absolutely. And one of the other things, I'm glad you mentioned that, Danny. One of the other things is that the changes on the model are not very significant, but the meat behind them are. So for example, this decision block here, which way you go, or maybe this is a better one, right? This says escalation. We could put a little box in here that says escalation. It's not much on the model, but it's a lot to work out. What does that really mean? So yeah, the modeling is a very good tool for communication. The other thing I will mention that Mert from Portland had done is he put up the PDF of the model and then just walked through it and put sticky notes with the comments all the way through. So that's another way that you can get people, get their feedback. So we ready to move on to?
I think so. Jeff, did you had your hand up? I don't know if you had another comment.
Oh, no, I think I pulled it down. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
So, all right. So this is on the left-hand side. These are the improvements that we wanted to make that kind of came through all of those discussions. And then the model, where we would be able to reflect those in the model, where we'd have to update the tool, and where we'd have to update the guidance manual. The guidance manual is going to, takes everything. So what we did is and we can talk about these things on the left, I think, as we go through it, but a lot of things we've touched on in this group over the last several weeks. So what we did is we put names next to each different piece of work, 2 names, one for to do the draft, one to do a review, and we have one, the guidance manual, We have it on a team site, so it's one document that everybody's working on the same document, and they can go back and see what's happening. Great group of people, very responsive, very timely on getting feedback on this. So we did that, and right now we have, these are our next steps, and I say the next 45 days because what we want to do starting in January, is the implementation plan, test it out. So one of the things we need to do is get a project. We can look at what's kind of needing a BCE to kind of be our test model. We've got to do the 2B process model. We've got to complete the update to the guidance manual. So right now we have really a draft update, but we have to build consensus on what we're saying in there. The tool we haven't touched yet, so that's the next thing we have to look at. And then we got to go back to the sponsors. What we want to do is go back to the sponsors, give them an update on this is where we are in the process. And then there's a lot of input that we need from them. All the things that we were just talking about in terms of escalation and composition of the team, the initiation, the criteria. This is where our hope is if they weigh in on this establishment and then they look at, after we apply it to a project, they should have the confidence that then they won't have to be looking at every BCE. That's kind of our current thinking, but we'll keep you guys updated. I mean, that's our journey so far. Yes, Dan.
Hey, Kathleen. Yeah. So you mentioned the guidance manual, and when I hear that and see that, sometimes I get a little intimidated or overwhelmed of like, you know, I guess my experience with those kinds of things is, at least as an engineer, is they make them detailed and then they get outdated and they're hard to keep up to date. Do you have any, I guess, lessons learned or kind of tips from what you're seeing or doing to make the guidance manual, I guess, a easier tool to keep relevant?
So actually, the guidance manual is a good reference. It does get outdated. I mean, for example, the very, very first paragraph is alignment with the strategic plan. And so our strategic plan gets updated. We just had a 2-year strategic plan, which is coming to an end. We have a 5-year one that's in development. But I think Itachu's recommendation is we just say align it with the strategic plan, and you don't go into the details of what that means, so that it can stay relevant. But I think there are, and this is not so much specifically to the BCE guidance manual, because I think the document that we have is pretty succinct. But we have gone through in the engineering department, pendulum swings back and forth. You know, how complicated should work plans be? Should everything be linked to something, right? So you just have we had 1-page standard operating procedures at one point. I really like those. So you basically, you take your say the guidance manual for the BCE where you would say approval process. That would be one SOP. So then you can update things as they change, update the person who's in charge, you know, as the organization changes, without updating the whole guidance manual. So those are a couple thoughts. We haven't talked about that in our team at all in terms of the, you know, keeping the manual up to date. I think that's a great point. Do others have some good thoughts on?
I've got a related question on that. And I think Jason could comment too. Whenever we create guidance, we seem to struggle with it being concise enough that anybody will take the time to read it because everyone's so busy. But if it's so high level, then it doesn't say anything. So how do you strike the balance there in such a way that people understand what's expected of them and how the information will be used?
Yeah.
Kathleen, you want me? Yeah. So one of the things our approach probably addresses your concerns, Jeff. I think the first thing is we like it to be as simple as possible, and as also short as possible. So what we did in the table, I think Kathleen showed, there are people from operation departments, from other departments. There is a bunch of people who are contributing to that one. So when you have representations like that contributing on the report, and once they contribute to certain section here and there, and then they are now reading it, the whole document as one package. And that helps you to, if they understand and if they agree with how the information flows, what type of information is included in there, and if they are happy with what they see in that report, with these varieties of people, with varieties of backgrounds and from different departments who see things from their perspective, from their functional responsibility. I think that's one way of making that document relevant. And I think that's a good checkpoint to see that people can see and read and understand what it says. And I believe we are doing a good job at that by involving others, not like Kathleen and I, making the writing and reading and things like that. And we try to be, like what we did is after we got everything from them, we try to read through the document, make grammatical corrections, and if the information doesn't make sense, then we just tweak it here and there, and then give it back to them so that they can read it and they can get back to us if it makes sense. I think that's, in my opinion, a good way of achieving the goal. Even though I don't think there is a perfect way, but this is one way we followed. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the models help with the communication, and I think different people have different ways of processing information. So a lot of times if somebody looks at a model, then they'll know where they want to go in the manual to get more clarification on one thing or another. But other people much rather read.
Yeah, so I think my experience tip is something similar to what was just said. Like I find documentation, it doesn't necessarily get out of date because it's long, it gets out of date because it's not used. So, as much as possible, like you just, like the use of documentation happens throughout. It's not just, oh, you write it once and you dust your hands and you're like, okay, great, we never have to look at it again. So I think something that I try to do whenever someone asks me a question is like, oh, we already had that question answered in the documentation, like on the phone, we'll open the document together, I'll walk them directly into the section. So it's sort of like the, give someone a fish, they'll eat for a day, teach someone to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime, that sort of idea. And just the use of the documentation is really important in how much stays up to date. And then, yeah, like you said, the whole going through the exercise of modeling, like picture says 1,000 words, and then that's really valuable to just flash on the screen, like the start of, say every single process meeting, you can just have the diagram up front, and then you draw a little circle. This is where we're currently at in the process, like just as a reminder. But
yeah,
small things.
But that's a great point. What did you say? Things don't get outdated because they're long. They get outdated because they're not used. I like that. So, Stephen?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is your BCE model something that is applicable to all the different disciplines within the utility? In other words, are there several different, somewhat independent groups that use it?
Great question. And it's actually applicable to all of the capital projects and anything that's being delivered through the capital program. We do have different business case evaluations used for justifying a position, new position, or change reclassification of position. We have a different business case evaluation that's used for our innovation projects. If it's going to be revenue generating, if it's not getting funded by the ratepayers, we have a separate kind of nonprofit arm of DC Water. So I'd like to merge it more once maybe after we get this 2B to spread it out a little bit more. But right now it's used for anything that's funded by capital.
Got it. Thank you.
And the other thing, we didn't talk much, but on our team composition, we would like to add finance and procurement folks to the business case evaluation teams. They're not currently in our process, but I think that's the kind of the next evolution in our particular utility is to go get the engineering and operations. We have to get ourselves integrated better. Once we do that, we'd like to get integrated with the rest of the authority a little better.
I think that'd be a great topic for us to pick up on more later, Dan and Kitachu. The levels of authority that are involved. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'll note that. So yeah, that was good to hear, Kathleen, because we're actually some of our finance type people are actually kind of leading our process. So Scott Parker, who's our asset manager, comes from a finance background and is doing a great job engaging with our engineering staff. And so he and I too are kind of partnering to figure out how we can kind of bridge those groups, because yeah, it's so important for these business case evaluations to have the expertise of both the engineering staff, operations staff, as well as the finance people to make it all come together. So. Right. Any other comments or questions for Kathleen and Getachew?
Thanks again for offering up this material. I think it's really helpful to be able to bounce around different people's material. You guys have been great that way.
Yeah,
anytime.
Sure. Well, Kathleen, just as a wrap up, I guess any words of advice for maybe those of us that aren't quite as far along as you guys are in the journey? I'm speaking even kind of for us and also for some of the partners out there that maybe don't have quite as much staff in place or haven't developed those teams as far. Maybe just kind of a
so I'll give you a couple. I haven't learned any lessons yet because we're not done. So I'm going to tell you all of my wishes. What's gone really well from my perspective is we got really great people on the team, and I just want to pull up this one crazy graphic there, right? Four of these people read the entire document and came back with these comments, I think, in about the first 2 weeks or something. One thing I learned from Getachew, which is great. So the first thing is you have the sponsors buy in, and then they assign people. So it's not so much a volunteer thing because it's really coming from their boss. But these people, you also listen to them, give them an opportunity to get rid of their headaches. I think that's very powerful in keeping them engaged and having them go the extra mile. But they're great people, so I presume everybody's got access to some great people. If you can get those on your team, that's a good thing. And then what I learned from Getachew is you break it into bite-sized pieces. So we meet, Getachew, how often? Every month or every 2 weeks? Maybe we've met 4 times since August.
Yeah, I would say on average, maybe 3 weeks is a good.
Yeah.
Because
so we give the assignments, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, here, go write this. This is each person was maybe a paragraph or a page. Go draft this, come back in 2 weeks with a draft. Make sure somebody else looks at it before you do it. And that helps you because then you're not getting the things that are like halfway done because somebody thought they could finish by 10, but they only started at 9, right? You have to give it to somebody the day before you have something done. So that would be my suggestion, is that you keep the burden on people kind of constant and low so they stay engaged and they feel part of the process and they have an opportunity to fix things that have been bothering them. So that's, I don't know, Getachew, you want to add?
No, I think that's fair enough.
All right, yeah, that's great. So I think, yeah, engage, I'm hearing engage your stakeholders, get out there and invite people to join what you're doing, and then tackle things in small bite-sized pieces. So I think that's great. Well, I think we've got about 12 minutes left, and I see Cello's got his hand up. So Cello, jump in there.
Yeah, I think this was really, thank you, everybody, first of all, on the week of Thanksgiving to be here and for the presentation. And it's really wonderful to see. And I different types of issues that we're facing. One is getting the right people involved, getting the right sponsorship and all that. And that is that is really tough. One thing that I think would help, and I hope you don't mind me kind of emphasizing this point, is that one thing that's different about this project and maybe from some other efforts is this concept of actually rigorously documenting what we do, developing these business process models. So what would be really useful is if you can, it's not realistic to expect that everybody in your organization is going to learn how to do it, although it's actually just documenting what people already do so they know what they're doing. So it's not really such a scary thing, but it hasn't been really standard practice in utilities. So again, if you have a person in your organization who is maybe the kind of psychological profile of those, you know, I'm a modeler myself, you know, the people who work by themselves in tennis shoes in a dark room and don't talk to many people and stuff, who likes to do hydraulic models or GIS and these kind of analytical things that could provide that kind of aspect to facilitate the people who are more into, you know, project management. It really helps. And again, you know, Mike here will, I'll do my best to help, because then if we develop such consistent documentation across these different utilities, it's really easy to see for you what the other people are doing. So that's just my pitch for, you know, keeping the eye on hydraulic modeling. And I see that Scott, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Oh, while Scott's getting unmuted, this is Dan. I'll just jump in and add, just piggyback on what Cello said, and give a shout out to our team member, Zach Monroe, who's on the call. He's kind of that quiet guy behind the scenes for us. He's just been with us for about a year. That's helping me to document and do the process modeling and flow charting, and helping to put the right graphics up on the screen so that people can provide that input and see that. So yeah, if you can find somebody in your organization that wants to learn, wants to jump in, wants to do this stuff, that's a great place to start. So Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the people side of things, the workforce and the organizational culture, some common themes that have come up are trust, engagement, actually fear, and how you deal with the fear of change and all of that. And Kathleen, and Getachew, it sounds like you've been really successful in this not being a big threat to the people who are engaged. And who, do you have any thoughts about that? Because seems like a real key to success.
I think that I just, you guys made me realize something. We have, and I'm sure other utilities have this, we have a big challenge with upward mobility, because, you know, we're not rolling out new products every year, right? We have the same service area that we've had for 50 years, and you know, the 2 million people may live in different places, but that's basically what we do, is do wastewater treatment water for those people. So if your manager and your director is happy, you got no place to go. So somebody had mentioned to me, you know, complaining about this, that this being involved in the BCE and the WRF project is just a great opportunity because they're learning, they're growing, they get this access to the artifacts, they get access to these other people who are highly motivated. So I think that they don't feel like, I think I know what you're saying, Scott, is that a lot of times when you want a new initiative, people take it personally, that you're coming in and saying you're doing something wrong, and then there's a lot of resistance. But if you come in and you say, we want you people who do this work to tell us a better way to do it, it changes the dynamic. I don't know, Getachew, I see your microphone kind of flashing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. One of the things I think we did was, we've been through this so many times. We understand how a change is successful, and just give it back to them and say, okay, guys, you are the people who do these things, who are going to use this to let's develop, let you take a lead, and we just left it to them to pick a topic and run with it. And we made it their own process instead of like, oh, we are in charge and things like that, and we dictate things. No, we never say that from the get-go. We just, gave it to them. We just one of them, and that helped us a lot. And they're very, willing to come to meetings, to share ideas, to review the guide document. And there has been a lot of success on that. I honestly believe that, this group are very fantastic group, and they are very, very, positive, and they are here to help. And it's been fantastic so far.
All right, well, excellent discussion. I've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure we wrap up, give people some time, but great job, Kathleen, Getachew, and also just the whole team. Thank you guys for engaging week after every 2 weeks like this. This is great. So, and Stephen, we got you lined up for December 7th. So I'll plan to circle back with you early next week. Enjoy the Thanksgiving week. Have a good Thanksgiving break. But kind of for everybody, take away what you heard today. And if you've got some lighter days here the next couple of days, kind of think about how you can move the ball forward on your initiative based on what we're learning. And we'll keep this going. And like I say, we'll have Stephen share some things from Gwinnett County on December 7th. And then we've also got Steve Talsman from King County. And then also for the whole group, let me know what other topics, where we want to focus our discussions. This can be as beneficial as possible to everybody, because I'm really appreciating the engagement and the discussion. So with that, we got 4 minutes. Any other final thoughts?
Thanks for doing this on your week off, Dan.
It's my pleasure. Thank you guys.